Right, now it's time to master the related distance. For this exercise, you place 2 cavalettis between 5 and 9 strides apart. Today I'm going for 5 strides apart, and that walks 22 paces. The distance between the cavalettis is slightly different to the distance between jumps, and this is why. With the related distance between jumps, you factor in 4 paces for landing and takeoff, 2 paces for landing and 2 paces for takeoff. But with cavalettis, you certainly won't land 2 paces away from it, and you won't need to allow 2 paces for takeoff. So we only allow an extra 2 paces for landing and takeoff. 1 pace for landing and 1 pace for takeoff. So instead of 24 paces for 5 strides, we only walk 22. How to count your stride? It's not at this point that you count your first stride, because your horse hasn't taken a stride yet. This is a common mistake and you'll end up with 1 extra stride. So to remedy that, at this point you say land, and then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's land 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once you're doing this well, it's time to work on your collection, obedience and adjustability. So you add 1 stride. The goal when you're adding is to have your horse really obedient when you're asking him to shorten. Then you mix it up and go back to 5 strides. And then on the other rein. Most horses struggle with collection, so be patient. It definitely improves over time. And obviously, the more you do this exercise, the quicker you'll see the improvement. Once you're nailing adding 1 stride, you can ask for even more collection and add 2 or even 3 strides. You can even drop a stride, and by that I mean do 1 stride less than the normal amount. This is slightly easier if the cavalettis are 7 or more strides apart. There is no easier way to make up time in a jump off than leave a stride out in a related distance. Just a warning, I don't really recommend dropping strides on a horse that tends to rush through their lines, or a hot horse. It just encourages them to want to rush even more. The very first habit you need to develop is to look at the next jump. Not willy-nilly just look in the direction. I'm talking about laser focused on the next jump. I often tell my students to pick a color on the pole of the next jump and focus on that. You do this so that you can find your takeoff spot for the next jump. Related distances don't just automatically just ride perfectly because they are measured out. You still may need to fine-tune your takeoff point by lengthening or shortening your stride. This usually depends on your horse's natural stride length. And secondly, you need to be aware of your ride into the line. Did you have a really quiet ride in, which means your horse just popped into the line and didn't land far enough from the first jump or cavaletti, and has very little momentum? In this case, you'd need to make up ground, so you immediately get your horse to lengthen his stride. Or did you come in really hot and landed really far over the jump or cavaletti with loads of momentum, which means you need to immediately shorten your horse's stride. You need to be acutely aware of how you jumped in and how the line is likely to ride, and make your adjustment as soon as possible and not just in front of the next jump. And thirdly, don't forget to count. This is easier to forget than you may think, especially in the ring when there's far more going on in your head than at home. So these 3 mental points need to become habits that happen automatically, and they can only become habits if you do them over and over again, so they become ingrained in your subconscious. So you practice this exercise for hours and hours on end, and you'll become a master of the related distance. And once you've mastered this, you apply exactly the same principles to related distance on a curve.